In Tess, about 5-6 lines from the top, where it says Oir Kidei Lasais. So this goes back to the Mishnah, the shear of carrying out a piece of hide. The Mishnah said that the amount is to write a kameya, an amulet. Sagt the Gemara. Rav Nachman. Rav asked the question from Rav Nachman. Hamaitzi Oir, someone that carries out hide on Shabbos. Bekama, what's the minimum amount? So although this is clear in the Mishnah, as Rashi says, this was sort of just a lead-up question to the next questions he's going to ask him. Amalei, so he answered him, Kiditnan, as it says in the Mishnah, the size of a kameya. Oir Kidelas is kameya. If he carries, Oir Kiditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Oir Kidelas is kameya. The height of an animal, the amount is to write an amulet. The next question he asked him, Hama Abdoi Bekama. Someone that tans the hide of an animal. What's the minimum amount to be chayiv? Amalei loishna, no different than the shear that it says in the Mishnah. La'abdoi bekama, if you're carrying out hide of an animal in order to tan it, for that purpose, what's the minimum amount? Amalei loishna, again, there's no difference. The shear is, like it said in the Mishnah, a kameya. Umina teimre, from where do I see that there's no difference? In other words, the chiddush here in the Gemara is, there's no distinction between a person that carries out a piece of oir, of a hide of an animal that's already been tanned and ready for use, and a piece that has not been tanned yet. It's raw material. Same shear of a kameya. From where do I know this? Like we learned in the Mishnah, Hamalabin, person that whitens the wool, Hamanapit, he combs it, Hatziveya, he dyes it, or Hatove, he spins it. Shiyurai Kimaloi Reichiv Hasit Kofel. The shear is the width that there is from the index finger to the middle finger, and double that size. That's the shear. Then it says V'ha'oireg Beis Chutin. If you weave 2 threads, also Shiyurai Kimaloi Reichiv Sit Kofel. The shear is the same shear from the index finger. You measure from the index finger to the middle finger, and you double that size. That's the minimum shear. So what do we see from this? Alma. We see from this Mishnah, Kivan de Latvia Koi Shiyure Ketavai. When it comes to Malabin, Menapit, Seveya, and Teve, so he hasn't yet, it hasn't been spun yet. It's not yet material that's ready to be used. It's raw material that he's whitening or he's combing it and so on. And then afterwards, when it comes to weaving, we're talking about material that's already been spun and it's already ready for use. Nevertheless, we see that the shear of the raw material and the shear of the material that's been spun already is the same. What's the reason? Even the Latvia koi, since even the raw material is destined to be spun and be used for weaving, ketovai. It's already like it's been spun and it has the same shear like the material that's been spun. Chanami. So we apply the same concept here regarding the hide of the animal. Even the laabdoi koi, since even the raw material of the hide of the animal before it's been tanned, but that's what it's made for. So therefore, shiuroi kima ubid. It has the same shear as the hide of the animal once it's been tanned, and the shear is, as it says in the Mishnah, kedei lasas kameya. Another case, the Gemara now asks, ushaloi laabdoi. Person takes out a piece of hide of an animal, not with the intention to tan it. Bekama, what's the shear then? Amalei, again he answered, loishna. There's no difference. The shear is the same, like it said in the Mishnah, kameya. Frag the Gemara, v'loi shani bein ma'ubid l'she'enim ma'ubid. Is there no difference in carrying out a piece of hide of an animal, whether it's been tanned or not yet, or it's still a raw material? Is there no difference? The Gemara here is now going to bring a few examples where we find that there is a difference between something before it's used, when it's in a raw state, and after it's used. The Gemara begins with this Mishnah here. Simonin, Eisvei. So let's go back a second. Eisvei. The question was asked as follows. Hamaitzi Simonin Sheruyin. A person carries out herbs that are soaked. This is what's used to make the dye. Kedei litzbaya behen, in order to dye with it. What's the amount? What's the minimum amount of these herbs that are soaked, the dye? Dugme kedei litzbaya ben dugme li'ira. To be able to dye a small example that's used to demonstrate to people this color. So we see that that's the amount, a dugma, for to show an example. Now, ve'ilu b'samanin she'einan shruya, when it comes to the herbs or the materials that are used to make this dye before it's made, before it's soaked in the water. Tanan, it says in the Mishnah, klipe egoizem, the shells of walnuts, klipe rimoinen, the shells of pomegranates, stis, upua, and other kinds of herbs, as Rashi brings there, the French words for them. Other kind of herbs that are used to make the dye. Kidei litzbaya ben beget cotton lepis vacha. The shear is in order to be able to dye a small piece of garment that's used on the net for a woman's hair. So this is a larger size. So you see over here that there's a difference between the dye once it's been made, it's already soaked in the water. Then there's a smaller size, just a dugme for to be able to prepare an example to show the color. And when it's in a raw state, so then it has to be a larger size for a baguette cotton. And says the Gemara over there, it's different. Itmar Allah, we learned pshat in that Mishnah. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, lefishe ein adam tereyach lishrei samon litzbaya ben dugme leira. A person will not go through the tirche, will not work hard to soak and prepare this dye just for the purpose to make this dugma, to make this color to show for people. If he's going through the whole process of preparing it, he's only going to do it if he has to use it at least for a baguette cotton, which is a larger size. So therefore, once it's already done, once it's been soaked already, so therefore it's prepared, so then the smallest amount is for a dugma, to prepare this dugma, to show people. But before, when it's in its raw state, this shear is going to be bigger, a baguette cotton, because a person would not go through this entire process if it's not going to be at least this bigger size of a baguette cotton. Now this is over here in this case, but as Rashi explains, when it comes to the hide of an animal, that's not the case. A person will tan a small piece of a hide of an animal just to make for himself an amulet. So therefore over there, that always remains the shear, whether before it's been tanned or after it's been tanned. The Gemara brings another example where we see a difference between something before it was used and after it's been used already, when it's in its raw state or once it's been used already. Let's see. Sagt the Gemara, v'harei zeroine gina, seeds, plant in a garden. The mekamid is arino, so before it's planted, tnan, so we learned, zeroine gina, the seeds of a garden, pachas mikegreigeres, the shear for carrying on Shabbos is less than a dry fig. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, chamisha, 5 seeds. That's the shear for carrying it. Vilu basa desarino, when it comes after it's planted, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, zevel v'choyladak, the manure or the fine sand, kedei lezabel boy kelach shel kruv, the amount to be carried, the minimum amount to be carried is for what's needed for the stalk of a cabbage. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Chachamim say, kedei lezabel kresha. The amount needed is to fertilize a kresha, a leek. So what do you see over here? Before it's planted, it says 5 seeds, or the amount of a groigeris. Afterwards, once there's something planted, what does it say? For a stalk, 1 stalk of a kruv, or a kresha of a cabbage, or a leek. So you see that there's a difference before it's planted and after it's planted. So should we apply the same distinction regarding the hide of an animal? Before it's been tanned or after it's been tanned? Answers the Gemara, same as he answered before. Ha'itmar Allah, Omar Rav Papa explains, Ha'dizriya and Ha'dilizriya. The difference here is, this is before it's planted, these are the seeds before it's planted, and this is after it's planted. A person does not go through the tirche to carry out and to take with him just 1 seed from one place to another. So over there it has to be a minimum of 5 seeds, or maybe a fig size. After it's planted, so then the shear is for 1 plant. A third case the Gemara brings, and this we had in the Gemara in the previous daf. V'harei tit, when it comes to clay. The mekam edelik belei, before it's been kneaded with the water. Tanya, we learned in a braise, moidim chachamim l'Rab Shimon, chachamim agree to Rab Shimon, b'moitzi sheifchen l'Rishus Harabim, a person that carries wastewater into the Rishus Harabim, sheshiyuram b'revius, the minimum amount is that the chayiv is a revius. V'havinam, but the question was asked, sheifchen l'mai chazu, this wastewater, what is it being used for? It's used to knead the clay. Once it's been kneaded, the water and the clay, it's been kneaded, what's the shear then? Tit kidelasas ben pi kur. The amount of clay to carry out to be chayiv and Shabbos is what's needed for the opening of a kur, which is the crucible that's used to refine the silver in it, which is a much smaller size. So again, we see that there's a difference between before, when it's in its raw state, it's a larger size, and after it's been made already, after it's been kneaded, it's a much smaller size. So again, the Gemara answers a similar answer. Hasam nami kida amadan, over there as well, as we have already answered. Lefi she'ein adam tereyach legabel esatit lasses by pikor. If it hasn't been kneaded yet, if it's raw in its raw state still, a person will not carry out wastewater just in order to make clay so tiny of an amount for this little hole that's needed. Then the shear is going to be at least the size of a revius to make a larger amount of clay. The Gemara brings another braisa, Toshama. We learned in the braisa, Domer Abchia bar Ami Mishmei de Ula. Actually, this is a statement from an Amoir in the name of Ula. Shloisha Eiresein. There are three kinds of hides of an animal. In other words, in their processing, to what degree it's been processed and worked out and tanned, there's three kinds of hides. Matzah, Chipa, and Diftera. The Gemara now will explain all of them. What are these three things? Matzah, one of them is referred to as Matzah Kemashmoi. Like what the pshat, like what it sounds, which is like what matzah is. What is matzah? Matzah has no other ingredients other than water and flour. So over here as well, there was no added ingredients that this was soaked in or applied to it to work it out. The loy maliach, it wasn't salted. The loy kamiach, it wasn't soaked in water and flour. The loy ofitz, and it wasn't also soaked in water and with gallnuts, which is another stage in working out and tanning the hide all the way. The kama shiyurai. So this matzah, this hide, which is just the plain hide before any of these things were added to it, what's the shear of carrying it out? Tani Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda kedei lotzaboy mishkailas katana. The shear is to wrap a small weight. The kama, and what's that amount? Omer Abaye riva de pumpedisa. The quarter of this weight size that was used in pumpedisa. Okay, they would wrap it with a little cloth or with a little hide in order that it shouldn't get rubbed out. So it should be a fair, honest weight. Then it says chipa. What's the hide that's called chipa? De maliach. It was worked out partially. It was salted, but veloi kamiach. It wasn't soaked in water and flour. Veloi yafitz, and it also wasn't soaked in the gallnuts. The kama shiyurai. What's the shear of carrying out this hide? Kiditnan, like it says in our Mishnah. Oir kedelasis kameya. The hide is the shear is taking it out, like to prepare it for a kameya, an amulet. The third category, diftera. What's a diftera? The maliach, the kamiach. It was salted, it was soaked in water and flour, but v'loy ofitz, it has not been soaked in it hasn't been applied, gallnuts hasn't been applied to it. The kama shiyurai, and what's its shear be carried out? Kedei lichtei v'alav es a get, to write on it a get. So what do we see over here? Katani mias, it says over here, Kedei lotzubai mishkailas katana, that the shear is to wrap a small little weight, v'amer Abaye riva de pumpedisa. And as we said before, Abaye said this is for what's needed for the riva of a pumpedisa. They would wrap it, and this is a larger size. This is a larger size than what it says in our Mishnah to write the kameya. So we see that there's a difference in the hides over here, if it's worked out 100% or not. So how could we say before that there's no difference? All the hides of the animal have the same shear, as the Gemara before said, lo yishna. So the Gemara answers, hasam bebishula. Over here, they were talking about the hide of an animal that was bishula, means it was still moist, it was still wet, and therefore it's not at all fit for being used to write on it. So over there, the shear of the Mishnah does not apply to write on it an amulet, and therefore the shear is bishula. The shear is that it can just be used to wrap the weights, but not to write on it. That's the reason why that's a different kind of a case. So what we said before, lo yishna, it was referring to the hide of an animal once it's dry. Over there, there's no difference. Before it was tanned, after it's tanned. Over here, the reason there's a difference is because it's talking about the hide of an animal which is moist. The Gemara brings another Mishnah we learned in Kalim, and we had this quoted before. Ha-beged, what's the minimum size for a beged, for the tumah of a medris? A medris is a zav that sits on something and makes it tumah. So the minimum size of a beged is shloisha al shloisha. 3 by 3 tvachim. Lemedris, for the tumah of a medris. Ha-sak, sackcloth, daled al daled, 4 by 4 tvachim. Ha-oir, the height of an animal, hey al hey, 5 by 5 tvachim. Mapots, vav al vav. A mat is 6 by 6 tvachim. And then bein lemedris and bein lemes. The Mishnah there says this is a shear both for the tumah of medris and the tumah of a mace. V'tani Allah. And then it says in addition in a brayso on this, ha-beged v'asak v'ha'oir, the garment which is made from wool, and the sack, which is sackcloth made from goat's hair, and oir, and the hide of an animal, kishir l'tumah, kach shir loitza. The shear for tumah is the same shear for Shabbos, carrying on Shabbos. So over here it says the shear would be 4 tvachim, regarding actually the height of the animal, it's 5 tvachim, which is much bigger than what's needed for a small amulet. So we see that there's a different shear here. Answers the Gemara, hahu bikurtuvla. Over there it's talking about kurtuvla, as Rashi explains. This is something which is cooked well in hot water, it's boiled in hot water and it becomes very hard, and it's not used to ride on it. It's used to sit on it, and therefore has a different shear, the minimum size that it's used to sit on it, which is 5 by 5 tvachim. Continuing on to the next thing that it said in the Mishnah, klaf, parchment. What's the minimum size to take out parchment on Shabbos to be chayiv? Kidei lichtev alav parsha ketana. To write on it a small parsha, which is the parsha of Tefillin. V'ramino, the Gemara asks a question from a brayso. We learned klaf v'duchsustos, a klaf, a parchment, and a duchsustos. We'll see soon in the Gemara what a duchsustos means. The hide of an animal is split into two, and there's one part which faces the flesh of the animal, and the other part that faces the hair of the animal. That's what the duchsustos is, as we'll see soon in the Gemara. But there are two parts of the hide of the animal. The klaf and the duchsustos. What's the shear? Kedei lichtev alav mezuzah. The shear is to write on it a mezuzah. Mezuzah has 2 parshas, Shema'am v'hoyim Shemaya. Not only the parsha Ketana of Tefillin. Answers the Gemara, my mezuzah, mezuzah shabbat Tefillin. The lashon mezuzah that it says in this brayso refers to the parsha of the mezuzah which is in the Tefillin, which is the Shema, one parsha of Shema. V'kari lahu, frak the Gemara, v'kari lahu l'tefillin mezuzah. Are we referring to Tefillin with the term mezuzah? Could this be that the Tana of this brayso said mezuzah, but he means the parsha, that one parsha of Shema? So the Gemara says yes, and I'll bring you an example. Vatanya, as we learned in a brayso, this is regarding the tumah of Kisvei HaKodesh. If you remember, we had towards the end of the first Perek the tumah that Chachamim were geyser. Asheni l'tumah, that there were guys on Kisvei HaKodesh because the women used to put truma near the Kisvei HaKodesh, and the mice came and started eating up the parchments of the Kisvei HaKodesh. So there were guys at tumah on Kisvei HaKodesh, and now this brayso explains to what extent that tumah applies to the tefillin. So it says in the brayso that tzuas tefillin ima tefillin, the straps of the tefillin together with the tefillin, mitamais esayadayim, they make a person's hands tummy with sheni l'tumah. Bifnei atzman, if the straps of the tefillin are separate, ein metamas asayidayim. They don't make the hands tummy. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda mishum Rab Shimon hanegeya beritzu toir. If you touch the straps of the tefillin, even if it's together with the tefillin, it's you're tahir at sheyiga beketzitza, unless you touch the bias, the backs of the tefillin itself. Rab Zakkai mishmayaymer. Rab Zakkai said in his name, toir, he would be toir at sheyiga b'mezuzah atzma. He'll be toir until he touches the mezuzah itself. What is this referring to? The mezuzah itself refers to the parshas inside of the tefillin. So we see here an example of a brayso that refers to the parsha inside of the tefillin, the mezuzah, because it's the same Shema that's written in the mezuzah and also in the tefillin. He refers to it with the same term. But now the Gemara goes back to the brayso that we quoted before, where it said that the shear is kedei lichtev alav mezuzah. Now, what did it say in the sefer of that brayso? Klaf, the shear of the parchment would be kedei lichtev alav parsha ketana shabbat tefillin. Shehi Shema Yisrael. The shear is to write the parsha ketana of tefillin, which is Shema Yisrael. So the brayso in the sefer clearly spells out this shear of Shema Yisrael, and it says the parsha ketana of the tefillin. Miklal. So that proves the reisha b'mezuzah atzmas. In the reisha, when it said kedei lichtev alav mezuzah, it is talking about mezuzah, not the mezuzah, the parsha of the mezuzah, which is in the tefillin. That's what it says in the sefer. It's two different things. So how do we learn pshat in this brayso now? So the Gemara explains, Hachi Ketani. Or in other gears it says, Elo Hachi Ketani. This is how you have to read this Braisa. Klav v'duchsustos. These two kinds of hides that are used to write on it tefillin and mezuzah. Klav and a duchsustos. Shiuram bekama. What is their shear? Duchsustos. So the first part of the Braisa, you have to divide the Braisa into two. Duchsustos kidei lichtav alav mezuzah. Duchsustos is the shear is to write on it a mezuzah. As we'll see soon, that's what a mezuzah is usually written on a duchsustos. Klav. The klaf, the parchment, which is usually used for tefillin, so the shear is to write in it a small parsha of tefillin, which is the parsha of Shema Yisrael. Okay, so that settles the pshat on this brayse. Now the Gemara will continue, and the sugi here will discuss the difference between tefillin and mezuzah regarding these two kinds of parchments, the klaf and the duchsustos. And we'll see here the difference between them. Omar Rav, the Gemara begins with a statement of Rav. Rav said, Duchsustos harehi klaf. Duchsustos is similar to the klaf. Ma klaf kaisvan of tefillin, just as the parchment you can write on it a tefillin. Av duchsustos kaisvan of tefillin. Duchsustos you can also write tefillin on it. So the Gemara now will ask the question on Rav from what we saw here in our Mishnah. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, klaf, the minimum size of the klaf to be chayiv when you might see on Shabbos, kadei lichtov, olav, as the Bach says, kadei lichtov, olav, parsha katana shebet tefillin, shishma Yisrael. So what do we see over here? This is the shear of tefillin. The tefillin could only be written on a klaf, not on a duchsustos. So how could Rav say that the tefillin could be written on a duchsustos as well? Answers the Gemara, le-mitzvah. What it says in our Mishnah is only as for a mitzvah and a mufcher. The best would be to write it on the parchment, in the klaf, not on the duchsustos. And as Rashi here explains, a geschmack of art, that if it could still be written on duchsustos, it's just a mitzvah and a mufcher to be written on the klaf. Why shouldn't he be chayiv on Shabbos if you for this amount buy a duchsustos as well? It would be kosher with a duchsustos as well. So Rashi says, because this is the mitzvah min ha-mufcher, stam edachol inish mitzvah ma'al yisa'avid. Our assumption is that a stam person will write the tefillin in a way of a mitzvah min ha-mufcher, and therefore less than this is not the usual amount that's shchiach for a person to use for this klaf, for this duchsustos, that is. Toshama, the Gemara brings from another brayse a question on what Rav said, that the tefillin could be written on a duchsustos as well. We learned in a brayse, halacha lo Moshe misinai, tefillin ala klaf. This is a halacha that was learned from Moshe misinai, that the tefillin is written on a klaf, and mezuzah al duchsustos, and the mezuzah is written on a duchsustos. And then the brayse spells out the difference between the two. Klaf b'mokim basar. Klaf is the part of the hide that faces the flesh of the animal. Duchsustos is b'mokim seyar. Duchsustos is the part of the hide that faces the hairs of the animal. So as I explained before, it wasn't one piece of hide, and we're talking about both sides of that one piece of hide. The hide itself of the animal was split into two, as we'll see soon in the Gemara. And then there was the part of the hide that was facing the flesh of the animal, that is used for tefillin, that's called klaf. Then the other part that was split off, and that part of that piece of the hide, on the side that's facing the hairs of the animal, that's called the chsustos, and that's where you write the tefillin. So here we clearly see a clear brayse. There's a halacha l'Moshe misinai that the tefillin should be written on a klaf and not on the chsustos. Answers the Gemara again, le-mitzvah. That brayse is only saying this for a mitzvah min ha-mufcher, but it's not ma'akiv. Fact the Gemara, but what Tanya, we clearly learned in a brayse, shina pasol. If he changed from what it says here, it's going to be pasol. Answers the Gemara, a mezuzah. That it says that if you changed, it's pasol. That's only regarding mezuzah. A mezuzah has to be written on the duchsustos. But tefillin, we can say what Rav said before, that it could be written both on the klaf and on the duchsustos. So the Gemara persists and further and says, but for Tanya, we clearly learned in a brayse, shina bazeh ubazeh pasol, that if you change by both of them, it uses the term bazeh ubazeh, it's going to be pasol. So the Gemara is understanding right now that refers to whether you changed by tefillin, you didn't write the tefillin on the klaf, or you changed the mezuzah, you didn't write the mezuzah on the chsustos, it's going to be pasol. Answers the Gemara, no, idi v'idi amezuzah. When it says bazeh ubazeh, it's going on mezuzah. And what is the two things when it says bazeh bazeh? V'ha de kasvinu aklaf b'mokim seir. One point the brayse is saying is, if you wrote it on the klaf, which is that part of the hide that is connected to the flesh of the animal, but you didn't write the tefillin, you didn't write the mezuzah, that is. We're talking about mezuzah now. You didn't write the mezuzah on the part of the hide that faces the flesh, you wrote it on the part that's facing the hairs. That's one example. Inami ad duchsustus, or the other part of the hide, you wrote it on a duchsustus, but b'makim basar. You did not write it on the outside part of the duchsustus that was facing that where the hairs of the animal grew. You wrote it on the inside part, which is facing the flesh of the animal. Either way, it's going to be pasul. Those were the two things that the Braisa meant to say. But it's not talking about tefillin. Tefillin, Rav said, you could write it both on klaf or on the duchsustus. V'bai say, man, now the Gemara brings up another answer. Perhaps we could say, Shina bezeh ubezeh tanoihi. This concept of Shina bezeh ubezeh, whether you can change and write tefillin on the klaf or on the duchsustus, would be a machlokes tanoim. Rav is going to go according to one Tana, and what it says here in this Braisa is another Tana. Tanoi, the Tanya, we learned in Braisa, Shina bezeh ubezeh. If he changed either one, the tefillin or the mezuzah, he didn't write the tefillin on the klaf and he didn't write the mezuzah on the duchsustos, pasul. Tanakama says it's pasul. Rav Ache machshe. Rav Ache says it's kosher. Mishum Rav Achi b'chanina, v'amir lo mishum Rav Yaakov b'chanina. Rav Papa Omar, Rav the Omar, Ketana de Be Menashe. He said that Rav's opinion follows what Tana de Be Rab Menashe said. The Tana de Be Menashe, kosva ala niyar. If you write tefillin on a piece of paper, vala matlis, or if you write tefillin on a cloth, psula, it's pasul. Ala klaf, but if you write tefillin on the parchment, vala gvil, or on a gvil. As Rashi here explains, gvil is parchment that you apply the gallnuts to it, and it's been worked out to that extent. It has a different texture, a different gvil. Or val duchsustos, or the duchsustos, ksheida. It'll be kosher. So right here we see that even if you wrote the tefillin on duchsustos, it's also kosher. Okay, so this is the source of Rav's opinion. Rav goes according to Tana de Be Menashe. So the Gemara says, Kosva Mai, when the Tana de Be Menashe was saying Kosva, if he wrote it, what was he referring to? If you're going to say that he was talking about a mezuzah, that if you wrote the mezuzah on a klaf or on a gvil, it would be kosher. Mezuzah, klaf, mikas vinon. Could you write a mezuzah on a klaf? Mezuzah has to be written on the duchsustus, as we said before. So it's not talking about mezuzah. Ela lav tefillin. The statement of Tana de Be Menashe was talking about tefillin, and he says it could be written on klaf or on gvil or on duchsustus. So this is a source for what Rav said. So the Gemara asks back, but according to your pshat, tefillin agvil mi kasvinon, could tefillin be written on gvil, which is worked out with these gallnuts? Could it be written on the gvil? Rav only said that tefillin could be written on the klaf or the duchsustus, but now we're saying gvil, we're including gvil here as well. So l'chayre it can't be referring to tefillin. Ella, rather, kitanyahi, that statement, the debate of Menashe, when it said kosva, and we don't know what kosva refers to, so it's not mezuzah. Now we see that l'chayre it's not tefillin either. So what is it referring to? Kitanyahi b'sefer Torah. That's talking about writing a sefer Torah. The Gemara says, I'll bring you a raya to this from another Braisa. This Braisa here is talking about changing. The beginning of this Braisa, as Rashi quotes here, is if a person has tefillin shel yad, you want to take the parshas of the tefillin shel yad and use it for tefillin shel rosh. Or you want to take the parshas from tefillin shel rosh and use it to tefillin shel yad. So the halach is, you could take the parshas of tefillin shel yad and use it to tefillin shel rosh, which has more kedusha, and you can't take the parshas of tefillin shel rosh and use it for tefillin shel yad, because you can't go down a level in the kedusha. You're not allowed to be mated in the kedusha. Then the Braisa there says, Kayetze by a similar din, tefillin shabalu, tefillin that got worn out, the sefer Torah shabala, or a sefer Torah that gets worn out, ein oisin mehen mezuzah. You can't use the parshas in the sefer Torah where it's written Shema and V'hoyim Shemaya. You can't use it for mezuzah. Why not? Lefisha ein meiridin mikdusha chamura lekdusha kala. Because you can't go down a level from the kedusha of the sefer Torah or the tefillin to the level of the kedusha of mezuzah, which is a level lower of kedusha. There's a big discussion here in the Rishonim exactly how the person is going to be using the parsha of Shema and V'hoyam Shemaya of the Sefer Torah. They're not written together. Shema is in Vaschana, V'hoyam Shemaya is in Ekev. How exactly is the person going to do this? From Rashi, it's mashma that he's going to cut it out and he's going to sew it together and put it into the mezuzah that way. Taisus is different pshat. Rambam. It's a big discussion about this. But what does the Gemara prove from here? So the Gemara says now as follows: Time the ein meridin. The only reason you can't do this is because you can't go down a level of the kedusha. Ha meridin. But if you would be allowed to go down a level in the kedusha, then eisen. You can use the what was written as Sefer Torah. You can use it for the mezuzah. So the Gemara now asks, the chsiva amai. What was the Sefer Torah written on? Lav the chsiva aduchsustus. Isn't the case you were going to have to say that it was written on a duchsustus? Otherwise, it can't be used for the mezuzah. So the Gemara says, Loi, the chsiva ala klaf. This was written on a klaf, not on a duchsustus. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, but a mezuzah klaf mikas vinan? Are you allowed to write a mezuzah on klaf? And the whole Gemara here, our assumption the whole time is that mezuzah for sure can't be written on a klaf. So over here, when it says that you would theoretically be allowed to use what was written in a Sefer Torah, to take it out and to use it for tefillin, it has to be talking about a duchsustus. So it's talking a Sefer Torah written on a duchsustus, and that's why it can be used for mezuzah. And this is what the Gemara is bringing here as a raya for the case before as well. Kosva, that when it said kosva, that it's written on a duchsustus, it goes on a Sefer Torah. Can't say it's talking about a klaf. It can't be used for tefillin. Again, it can't be used for mezuzah. That is. Mezuzah, again, mezuzah, klaf, mikas vinan. Could you write mezuzah on klaf? Here, so the Gemara says now, yes, in fact, mezuzah could be written on a klaf. V'hatanya, as we learned in the Braisa, kosva ala klaf, ala neyor, vala matlis, psula. If you wrote the mezuzah on a klaf, on the parchment, or on a paper, or on a garment, it's possible. Rab Meir would write the mezuzah on klaf, on the parchment, because it's preserved on the klaf. It's going to be written and be preserved on it. So we see here that there's the opinion of Rab Meir that you could write a mezuzah on the klaf. Okay, so therefore this braisa over here that's talking about Tefillin Shabbalos, Sefer Torah Shabbalah, could also be talking about that it was written on a klaf for the Tefillin or for the Sefer Torah, and theoretically it would be able to be used for mezuzah, if not for the issue that you're going down a level in the Kedusha. So now the Gemara comes back to the statement of Rav. Hashte the asis lahachi. Now that you have brought a source to this idea that a mezuzah could be written on a klaf, it does not have to be written on a duchsustus. L'Rav Nami, in the pshat of what Rav said, Loi teime duchsustos hareyu keklaf. Don't read that Rav said that the duchsustos is like a klaf regarding tefillin, that just like tefillin could be written on a klaf, it could also be written on a duchsustos. Ela ema, rather say what Rav said is klaf hareyu keduchsustos. That klaf is similar to duchsustos, and he said this regarding mezuzah, not regarding tefillin. Ma duchsustos kaisvan olav mezuzah, just as a duchsustos you can write in it a mezuzah. Av klaf kaisvan olav mezuzah. So too a klaf you can write in it mezuzah. Rav wasn't necessarily talking about tefillin at all, and therefore we don't have to say that there's a machlokes tanoim regarding that, as we mentioned before. Rather, Rav was talking about mezuzah, relying on what Rab Meir says over here, that as long as it's mishtameres, it could be written even on a klaf as well.